Hello everybody, welcome to Introduction to Databases and SQL. In this session, we will see Introduction to SQL, Structured Query Language. Let's begin. So the agenda is going to be like this. We will understand what is structured query language and what is the use of it and how it has to be used and what are different types of SQL commands which are actually developed as part of SQL to interface with the database management systems. So let's begin. So what is SQL? SQL stands for Structured Query Language. So it is a query language which is used to manage relational database management systems. So what is a relational database management system? The database management system which is based on the relational algebra or the relation concept. The relation is nothing but the table. In other words, we can say the relation depicted as a table. So in database management systems, if table is a basic storage unit, then we call that as RDBMS. And if table is there in the RDBMS, and how do you go and access it? How do you store data? How do you retrieve data? How do you update the data? In order to do all these things, you require a query language, and that query language is SQL. So SQL is meant for storing and managing data in relational database management systems. So, we have so many relational database management systems available today. As an example, MySQL, and we are working on MySQL now. And we have Informax, we have Oracle, we have SQL Server, we have DB2. All these are standard RDBMSs. And SQL allows users to query these databases by writing certain commands, which are just like English language statements. And SQL is a non-procedural language. It's a non-procedural language. That means it's not a language like C or C++ Java, where we write a block of code. SQL is a declarative language. So where we issue certain commands, we issue some orders, and your query is just one sentence. You will start writing a sentence and you will end with. It's not more than one line actually. So that means one line in the sense it's not more than one sentence. You have to start a line or a sentence and end it. And you will not be having more sentences in a query. So that's called a declarative language. And let's understand some more details. And SQL is not case sensitive. What do you mean by case sensitive? For example, if I write select in capital case, select in small case, and select in mixed case, all are same. If it is not case sensitive. If it case sensitive means there is a difference between select in capital and select in small. So in SQL, you can write the commands, you can use them in any form actually. You can write capital cases, mixed cases, and smaller cases, but it's always better to follow a standard actually. And generally, keywords of SQL are written in uppercase. So that is the standard. And they are simple text lines. And by using SQL statements, you can perform kind of CRUD operations, CRUD. You can do creating data or creating tables, creating databases, updating the data, retrieving of the data, and deletion of the data. So that is actually CRUD. So CRUD is a standard form now in applications. And in order to do these CRUD operations, we require certain commands, and those commands will be supplied by this structured query language. And in fact, SQL depends upon relational calculus and relational algebra, which is a theoretical thing actually. Now, how these SQL queries will process? So you write an SQL query. So for example, select star from employee, where employee employee salary greater than so and so amount, right? So that particular query first will be parsed, and any optimization has to be done, that will be done. And later that query will be going through the database engine. So I will be showing that engine now. In MySQL, while using MySQL, you have different database engines. Through this engine, the SQL query is passed to the physical database and it gets the data. So you're asking for employee details where salary is greater than some amount. So all those records which are matching the criteria will fetch it back from the physical database. And database engine plays a vital role actually, and it translates your query such that the physical database understands it and produces the result. Okay, so that's a basic introduction to SQL. And if you can actually see here, we are going to work with SQL and MySQL. MySQL is a relational database management system. We know that it's a database management system based on the relational concept, that is a table concept. So here in a relational database management system, what happens is the database is structured. You will have the structured data. So you define this data has a column name or a field name, and this data belongs to this field name. Like that, we will structure it. As an example of employee table, I say employee ID, employee name, and employee salary. So we clearly tell that employee ID is going to be an integer, employee name is going to be a string, and employee salary is going to be a floating point value. Like that, we clearly specify the fields and their data types, etc. So that's why it is a structured uh, database management system. So RDBMS is a structured database management system. If you see nowadays, we have unstructured databases also. So non-structured database example. So we have MongoDB. So MongoDB is unstructured database management system. So then we have GraphDBs like Neo4j, where they are not structured actually. So since 1970 till 2007-8, so we have the domination of structured database management systems only. So all the data that is available is structured only. Later after, because of the technology that has come, and because of the Web 2, and because of the introduction of the 3G, 4G, and data is widely available, because of the social media, and much of data is coming into place, then unstructured database have evolved. So otherwise, the most of the domination since the inception of the computers is the structured database management systems. So which are nothing but relational database management systems, where table is the basic storage unit. Now SQL is actually a structured query language to query the data from this RDBMS. So it has set of commands which are understandable by these RDBMSs. What are the RDBMS I am telling, like MySQL or Oracle or DB2, whatever it is. They will understand these commands and provide the data. So it acts actually as an SQL acts as an interface to the user and the RDBMS. So user issue this SQL command, and these commands go to RDBMS. They understand it and they act accordingly, and they will give the data back to the user. So we can say SQL is an interface between user and RDBMS. And there are a number of versions of SQL. And as I told, it has actually started in 1970s, especially when in IBM, there is actually one project called R project. So while working on R project, they have come up with this SQL. So SQL is also called as SQL, the pronouns as SQL. And later it got actually standardized by ANSI, American National Standard Institute, in 1996. And later, somewhere around 1989, ISO also standardized SQL. So now all the RDBMSs, what I'm listing, they are SQL compliant database management systems. SQL compliant database management systems are nothing but RDBMSs. What are the examples of RDBMS? MySQL, Oracle, DB2, PostgreSQL, Informatics, and SQL Server from Microsoft. So these are different RDBMSs where SQL commands can be issued and they will act on it. Okay, so as a summary, SQL is a standard query language, whereas MySQL is a DBMS software based on SQL. That means SQL compliant DBMS. So let me actually take you to here. So what is an SQL? It's an interface for RDBMS, relational database management systems, and table as a basic storage unit. Okay, so the DBMS now we call as SQL compliant. So that means they will understand SQL commands, right? So what are those DBMSs? So we are now using MySQL here, and we have Oracle, and we have DB2 from IBM. Of course, MySQL and Oracle both are owned by Oracle Corporation. And then we have SQL Server as well. We have SQL Server, which is from Microsoft, and we have Postgres SQL. This is also a famous one. And of course, we have Informax. That's also one of the famous RDBMSs. And of course, we have other as well. Yeah. So these are all SQL compliant database management systems. So these are also called as relational database management systems. Okay. And then what are the basic SQL commands? What are basic SQL commands so that I can issue to my structured database management system, which is nothing but RDBMS. First one is DDL, data definition language, which actually takes care of the database schema or structure. So you have a database created, and the DDL commands take care of the schema or the structure of the database. So that means how many how many fields are there, what are the types of those fields, what is the name of that particular table, and what are the constraints which are applied to a particular structure, what are the constraints which are applied on each column, right? So all these details are actually taken care in the DDL actually, right? So now let me list the commands which we'll use in DDL. So DDL stands for data definition language. Data definition language. So they define data. So kind of meta things actually. So the commands from the SQL with respect to DDL are create. So you can create a table, and you can alter a table, and you can drop table. So you are speaking of only structure. You create a structure, table structure, and you can alter the table structure. So you have 10 fields actually. Now you want to add more, you can add it by altering it. And you want to change the data type of a particular field, you can actually change it by using alter. And if at all you want to drop the entire structure, you can actually do it also. And we have one more command, that is truncate actually. So truncate also considered as a DDL command. And coming to the DML. So DML stands for data manipulation language. So these DML commands will work on database instance. Database instance means exact data. So through DDL, you have defined the structure, and now you want to put data into that particular structure. So that is nothing but database instance. So now how do you add data to the structure? So you have a command called insert. And once you insert, you want to update, then you have an update command. And if at all you want to delete certain rows or certain records, then you have a delete command as well. So there are three commands: insert, update, and delete. Okay, so these are DML. So one difference I can actually point here is, whenever you write DDL commands, you will use a keyword called table. And whenever you use DML commands, table keyword will not be there. So no table keyword. So directly we will give table name only. Okay, so create table name. That's how I use in DDL. And DML, I will directly insert into some particular table. So I need not to give the table keyword as well. And coming to DCL, DCL means data control language, which is for authorization, which is for authorization. So that means who are all the users allowed to access this particular database which has been created, and which all users have the privilege of creating the database, or manipulating the database, or querying the database. Like that, we can actually give privileges to the users using these DCL commands. Okay, so who are allowed to use this table and what operations they can actually perform on the table or database, right? So it's about authorization. So we have two commands actually. One is grant and revoke. So we can actually grant the privileges on particular table or particular database for an user, and we can revoke the privileges also. So that's about the DCL. And then we have something TCL actually. So transaction management. So a transaction, of course, a transaction involves set of instructions, or we can otherwise say set of tasks. So for example, I want to withdraw money from a bank. So I need to follow certain process actually. So there may be uh, two to four, five actually steps. Okay, transaction involves some steps actually. So all those steps combined we call as a transaction, right? So if all the five steps are done, then only your transaction is done. And any of the steps is missed, then your transaction has to be rolled back, right? So in order to take care of these transactions, we have some commands which are called TCL commands as of SQL. So they are, we have commit. So I want to commit the transaction. So all the steps are done, I want to commit. Now some steps are missed, so I want to roll back, and I can roll back to some point actually. So that is save point. So these are the commands of TCL. Okay, and finally comes a very important command, that is the query command. Sometimes we call as data query language. And this query command is to retrieve records of a table. So you have the table, you have the database which contains of several tables, or a specific table you go into and you want to get the data, you want to fetch the data, you want to retrieve the data. Then you have to use the query command. And this query command is only one command, but whole of database revolves around this command only. That is the select command. Select star from employee. So everything of employee table is available to you. So this is very, very important command, and there are a number of clauses that can be used with the select. And based on select, the 50% or 50 to 70% of whole of database management system is about knowing select command only. Okay, so these are fundamentally the basic SQL commands. DDL for the structure, to manage the structure or the database schema. DML for to operate or manipulate the database instance. DCL for authorization. TCL for transaction management, and query command to retrieve data. So as I mentioned, all applications now requires CRUD operation to be performed. CRUD, CRUD operations. So what is CRUD actually? And whether these SQL commands covering them. So CRUD means create. Yeah, you can actually create a structure, you can actually create data. That means you can insert the data, and you can retrieve. So you can retrieve using the select command. You can update the data. You can insert data so that your table get updated, and a particular record can also be updated. And of course, you can delete. So all the CRUD operations are possible with just DDL, DML, and query command. Okay, so this is a basic SQL commands or basic introduction to SQL. So let me actually take you to one more slide over here. Yeah, so these are types of SQL command. So what I discussed so far, data definition language, DDL is to create, alter, delete database objects, we are saying. So that's nothing but structures. So what are different objects you will have? We will have tables, we'll have views, we'll have indices created. Okay, from a table we can create a view, and indexes can be created on tables. Indexes can be created on views as well. And then coming to the data manipulation language, so you have basic three commands: insert, delete, and update. And sometimes retrieve also considered as data manipulation, and people will separately treat also. So if you're not saying DQL or query command, you have to include select as part of DML. So if you write separately DQL or query command, so DML is only about insert, delete, update. And sometimes we may consider select as also data manipulation. That's actually our understanding. So, okay, let's not confuse. Actually, query command is select command. If you write separately as a query command, it's okay. Otherwise, that query command can be considered as part of the DML. Okay, so here we are saying select is also part of the DML, and some people will not convince about this, and we will write separately as a query command. So just for understanding only, let's not get confused. And we have transaction control language, we have commit, rollback, and save point, used to control the transaction, to manage the transaction. And of course, data control language used to manipulate permissions or access rights to tables, access rights to the users on tables. So grant these privileges, revoke these privileges, etc. and etc. Okay, so this is basically the introduction, and let me actually go to uh, MySQL. So that is RDBMS, which you are working in. In the last session, I have actually shown you the WAMP. So this is my WAMP actually here. WAMP, so it actually works on Windows, and which has Apache, MySQL, and PHP. So now this session, what I did, I have installed MySQL community server, and I have got my MySQL community server downloaded. So you can also install by going to Google. You can actually say MySQL community server, and then you can actually download this. Okay, and I have downloaded it. Now, how do I access that? So let me actually click on my Windows. Now here, since I'm using it, was there here, MySQL 8.1 command line client, and let me click on this, and it's going to come here. Yeah, so it's asking me password. So while configuring your MySQL after downloading, so during the installation, it will ask you about the password. So then you have to give your password. Okay, so I have given my password here as something, and so I was now into MySQL. Okay, so this is my MySQL, which is an RDBMS, which is SQL compliant database management system. So when I go to MySQL, so what the first thing I do is I will actually find out what is the version I am using. Of course, you have this version. Server version is already available here, 8.1.0. So let me actually check. So select version. Okay, so version is so and so, and 8.10. So now you can actually do some things. For example, you want to know about current date. Now you can actually say current date. Now you will actually get what is the current date over here. And in fact, so you can clear the screen with the system CLS. The screen will get cleared. Now, for example, I have something like this also. Select now. So it will give you the timestamp as well. So today and what is the time. So it is showing as actually the time as well. Right. In the same fashion, we can actually select user. Okay, who is the user? Okay, we can write in one line or multiple lines, of course. Yeah, so the user is root. Okay, so this is nothing but select user. And the same time, I can actually select for many things as well. User, and of course, what is the time now, right? So I will also say select user comma now. So now this is the user, and this is the current timestamp. So these are basic things just to know about just to try in MySQL. But this is not what exactly is required. So now what we have to do is we have to find out what are the databases this MySQL has. Right. So now we will say show databases. Show databases. So your tables will be part of a database. So straight away you will not create a table in MySQL. So you need to create a database. In the database, you will have the tables created. So now let's find out the databases here. So information schema, MySQL, performance schema, sys. So the first four are actually system databases, and world is the database which I have added while installing. So while installation of MySQL server, MySQL community server, it will give you the option to select to have two databases, and one database is the world database, and I have added that actually to my database so that we can actually work on this database, the predefined database. So now I want to use world database. I have to go to use world. Yeah, database changed actually. Database changed. I'm not creating any database. I'm using the existing ones actually. So once I'm into this database world, now I want to see actually show tables. Yeah, so this world database has tables actually, city, country, language. So the database about the world actually. So now you will know about all the countries actually of the world and all the cities of the world, and what country speaks which language. All the information was there in this particular world database, and we will work on this database because it's a big database, so that we can actually try finding finding some information from this particular world. So rather than creating the database by ourselves, we can actually make use of this database because this is a big database. For example, let me actually show you. Select a star from country. So everything I want actually. So here, these are all the country details. So you are going to see, so there are 239 rows. That means there are 239 countries listed over here, right? So now select star from country where um, code equal to IND. The India country code is IND because I have studied this database a bit. So I know actually what are the fields it has, etc. Yeah, so now select star from country where code equal to India. So now I have this thing coming up actually, but since the number of fields are more, we are actually not able to see properly. So I can actually do some tweaks so that we can actually get the information properly. So now I want to see how this table is created. So now I can actually see the structure. DESC means describe country. So now this is the structure, and here also because multiple fields are there, I could not able to see properly. So what I do is, so now I will actually write a command show create table country. So then you will see clearly how it was created. So now you can actually have the details like create table country. There is a code, there is a name, there is a continent, there is a region, there is surface area, there is independence year, population, life expectancy, and then GNP world, then local name, government form, head of states, capital city code. This is a code actually, not the capital city, and like this. Okay, in the same fashion, so now we can actually see select a star from city. So I have a city table also, and it will actually give all the cities. And of course, there are good number of cities. There are good number of cities. So that's a huge database that we have. So we can actually work on this database and we can actually get some information and we can get intelligence from these databases. So this is the database that we are going to work on. It's go on coming. So there are 4079 rows, right? So now what I'm doing is select star from city where code equal to, so here it is country code actually, COUNTRY, country code equal to IND. So in India itself, there are 341 cities actually listed in the database. Okay, if you want to see the structure of this city, then you will have something like this. So it's simple. You have the city ID, city name, country code, district. District is nothing but kind of a state here, and the population. What is the population of that particular city? So in the same fashion, we have another country that is another table that is country language. Now you can actually see it actually displays country code, what is the language is official, and percentage of people speaking that particular language. You want to see, select start from country language, where, so I want to know country code actually, country code equal to IND. So I want to get all the data where the country code is India. So they have listed actually 12 languages, 12 languages, and the people speaking that particular language. Okay, so this is some details about the world database which we have by default available with MySQL Community Server. So whenever you are installing MySQL Community Server, while you are configuring, it will ask you to actually add databases. There are two databases. The first one is something called Cycla, and second is World. So select World so that you can actually work on the countries, the cities, and the languages. Okay, so this is basically the introduction about SQL. So in the next session, we will actually deal with DML commands. Thank you.